Hi, I'm Christian, the Crisis Coach. Today I want to talk about changing the programming in your mind to the conditioned pre-programmed responses that you've kept going on for a number of years and how to deal with things in the moment. I've moved on in my life to start to look at things as they happen and deal with them there and then, not with the pre-programmed responses that have followed me throughout my life and often let me down, dealing with things like I did 20 years ago. I want to deal with things today in the mindset that I am and not like I did before. I want to show you now how you can also go on to do that. By the age of 35, 95% of our responses to problems and dilemmas in our life are preconditioned and prearranged already. But we're reacting to things like we always have done. Some of these pre-programmed responses you give are some of the great things that make you up. Maybe your humour, your love, your compassion. These are the things that when situations happen, you go back to your pre-programming, and these are the positive sides because you deal with them in a really good way, and these are the positive aspects of the pre-programmed condition that you've had all your life. You must ask yourself though, are some of these pre-programmed responses that you make part of the you now or part of the you in the past? A good example to use is, have you ever noticed with kids and parenting? Some parents, and I was one of them, when my kid falls over, the first thing I do, you're all right, son, you're all right, you'll be all right. And then we wait because he doesn't know how to react yet. If he's in proper pain, he will then show that pain. But 9 times out of 10 falls, they can just get up from. So I pre-program my kids to know if they're in pain, then they show, they seek assistance, they need it. If not, they just brush it off, get up and get on with it. Whereas you'll meet another parent and they've pre-programmed and conditioned their child into a response. The kid falls, they're over, are you all right? Johnny, are you all right, Johnny? And Johnny looks at them, not knowing what to do, and he sees the fear in their faces. And what does Johnny do? Johnny straight away goes, because he doesn't know any different. And he maybe take that forward into his life, that he's always, his response is first the fear of the situation. Johnny wasn't hurt 9 times out of 10, but he felt the hurt and pain of it because some parents precondition their kids to react in a certain way. Another classic example of pre-programming is parents who go on to have more than one child. The first child is the learning child, and you do a lot of how you go about their behaviour, how you deal with situations, whatnot, and you pre-program it. And without you knowing, you pre-program your responses to lots of situations. But then when you go on to have a second child, you think about the programming of the first one and you make several changes to how you go about the parenting and general day-to-day life than you did in the first instance. So you're already learning to change in your pre-programmed and conditioning. And as a parent also, it's important to remember that a lot of your programming came from your parents. So how you saw your parents being with you, be it good or bad, you'll often take that on board because that's the conditioning that you had. That's what you know from the past. So sometimes when I've been a poorer parent, I've thought of it afterwards. I've thought, is that me? Or is that how I was brought up and parented? And it's times like that you really get to see the examples of pre-programming and conditioned responses to things that happen in our lives. So if you, as a parent, you're watching this, or if you're not a parent, you can kind of follow what we're saying. If you can change your pre-recorded ways of dealing with things in parenting, what can you do at work, in your social life, in love, in clubs, in any other aspects of your life? You can change the way that you react to certain situations to not react as you always have. It wasn't until I was older and being a parent that I realised at a certain time after, as I looked to evaluate what had gone on with my first son, that I started to think, my stepdad was a very, very strict parent in the early days, and that came from his parents. He told me about his parents and they were so strict, and he followed it on with me. Stuff like, if I hadn't eaten my tea at 5 o'clock at night, that was me go to bed, and I was a real fussy eater, so I spent a lot of nights go to bed early, or if I was a minute late, I was grounded. Because these are the strict things that he'd been pre-programmed and conditioned to follow. And after a stage, I remembered that I don't have to follow them things. They were mistakes I made with my first son. And I can learn from them, reflect and move on and change the programming. Because I can do that at any time, change my internal programming once I become aware of it. Are you an angry person? Are you someone when something happens, you flip and lose it? You know, I was thinking last night that I have to be honest, I'm an ex-angry person. And it was understanding the fact that I could change my responses to certain things that happened. It was a classic thing happened last night. Last night, opened the fridge, the cream fell out of the fridge on the floor everywhere. In the past me, I'd have gone crazy. Not, oh, what's it against? Oh, who's put that in? I'd have blamed. First thing I'd have done was done the blame game. Who's done that? Who's put that there? But last night what I did was, I just started acting and started cleaning it up. Didn't even bother me at all. It was like a slight, oh, that was unlucky. But I used to get so heated up with that because that's how I pre-programmed myself to be angry and mad. I grew up being angry and mad, and at some point I had to lose it. And that's what I'm wanting you to start to understand, that you can control how you are in every moment if you stop and think about it in the moment. One of my even stranger pre-programmed responses to things was, and it grew, and it only started when I was later in life, probably about maybe teenage onwards, but I started getting annoyed if someone woke me up, and what would happen is something would wake me up and then I'd wake myself up with being in anger, and it got to the stage where it was crazy. My ex-wife, I mean, she saw the weaker version of me, and she sees the new version now because we have established a great relationship, but I often feel sorry for her enduring my early years. But the waking thing, I used to get to the point where I remember once I got woke up to go on holiday 10 minutes before I stated I would, and I wasn't going to go, and I lost it. And that self-harm I created, I was so angry, so mad over such a little thing because I developed this pre-programming and conditioning, and that's how you should react. Now if someone wakes me up, I've got kids, so it happens all the time. I've just learned to deal with that and not do that pre-programmed response as I did in the past because, to be honest, it was a bit weird. I don't know. You've got your own. I know it now as I'm saying this one. You're probably thinking of your own. You think, oh yeah, I do that to this or this to that situation. It's strange, but once you start to accepting it, that's the point you can think about changing it. One of the things that programmed my parenting and conditioned me was during my childhood, I was loved. Definitely I was loved, but I was never ever told it. I don't even think there was once that someone said I love you. Actions do it and stuff, but I was never told it, and I sort of know that I missed that. So I programmed myself and my kids, no matter what, I would always tell them I love them. I tell them I love them all the time. It's not an uncomfortable thing. It was almost like the same situation because my mum had never said she loved me. It was awkward, and then my mum passed away many years ago, and she was ill, and during her illness we had 6 weeks before she died. I started telling her I loved her every day, and it just became more and more normal every day. By the end of her dying, we were preconditioned again, changed ourselves to show affection and love and to be open with each other, and it was amazing. It was a blessing. I see it as a blessing that I got a chance to reprogram how I was about certain things. Ask yourself, how many of your responses to difficult situations are positive? Because if you're blowing your mind, you're not healthy thinking, and you're not dealing with the current affairs in your normal logical sense. Probably people count on you a lot, and they probably get used to you reacting. If you're like, you are the boss in an office and you lose your crap, everyone's sort of hiding away, and their day is a little bit like, oh no, I hope he's all right today, or I hope she doesn't lose it. Because your pre-programmed response to most things is to deal with things like you did 20 years ago. You're not 20 years ago yourself. You've moved on a lot in that time. So you have to establish with yourself that when something happens, am I doing it again? Am I reacting as I did in the past? Or am I reacting like who I've become? And you can change it in the moment, just like I did with the getting woken up. You have an option to change it. How you deal with every situation, you can just stop. I'm doing it. I'm blowing my trumpet again. And is it that big? It probably isn't in most of the time, but you probably have this pre-programmed conditioning to react as you are, because that's what's normal to you. But analyse it and think, go back and think, how many times have I actually done this now? God, I go back, I do it with me, and my son Dylan, who's doing amazing, I'm so chuffed with him, he got some of the negative parts of me. But then he gets, since he was become a teenager and he's grown up with me when I started learning to read about different ways of being, he's benefited from that. So I think I've cleared that one, and I'm all right with that, because he's turned out to be a really, really good, motivated, kind, gentle person. If you had to tell someone today about 5 scenarios that happen in your life, 5 troublesome things, you lose someone does something to you, whatnot, and then you have to tell them how you're going to react to that situation, how would you tell them, would you react compared to what you would actually do? Because maybe thinking about the things, because life's full of events and they're happening all the time, and how we react to them is often based on the day, how we are on that day. But then there's this preconditioning things that push you to react. And if I want you to start looking in and thinking, God, I do it. This is what I did. I looked at me, especially with parenting, because I think it's so important. You know, my family's the most important thing in the world, and I was letting them down by being a bit of a jerk. You know, a bit of not managing my own self and taking it out on them. That's not their fault. It was mine. So that's something that I really, really want you to think about. Think about changing that preconditioned aspects of what you do. I'm trying to simplify a lot of the information that I give in the videos is from the reading that I do, and I read a book called so dyslexic at remembering stuff. I apologise for any of that as well, and I am aware that a lot of the words I say I get wrong, so apologies. The book was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and it identified about the preconditioning and how we're dealing with things like we were dealing with it in the past, and that really helped me, as does reading any self-development thing or anything that's going to improve you as a person. To recap it all, what I want you to deal with every moment in the moment, not as you always deal with it, different. Every time something happens that's the same and you deal with it the same and you're angry or mad, you get the same outcome. If you want a different outcome and you want a healthier life that's not full of anger and frustration, then you need to start addressing everything that happens and dealing with it in a slightly different way, and stop the pre-programming. Stop acting like you did when you were 20 and you're 45. Stop acting like your parents did because they showed you how to go mental about certain subjects. Life is not what happens to us, but it's how we deal with what happens to us. And I know, as a man of 42, that I deal with things a lot better than I did in my 20s. In my 30s, I've been getting better. By the time I leave this decade, I know that I'll be much calmer, be much less the person that I'm trying to get away from, which I am still trying to get away from. I do still have my moments where I've got the pre-programmed and conditioned stuff. I am trying to get away with it. Yesterday was a test. This is a beautiful setting. I came down here first, forgot my notes, rode back home, came back down again, dropped my notes in the water. It's getting a bit testing, but the final thing, well, no, this wasn't the final thing. I did the whole filming of the video, and at the end of it, I realised I had it pointing the wrong way, so the video then became useless. Then, to top it off, as I was getting up to go, I thought I'll come back tomorrow. I stood in there. But my pre-programmed response this time wasn't to be angry. It was more to think, right, it's not for today, let's save it for tomorrow.